Welcome to the Damian and Timeesha Show. Each week, power couple Damian and Timeesha are taking you behind the scenes with successful influencers to share their secrets on creating a successful brand and tackling your biggest business and relationship struggles. Their mission, to help you see whatever you want is possible. Build the business and life of your dreams today.
Welcome to another episode of the Distinguished Gentleman, a leadership empowerment podcast for men. Man, I'm excited for this guest that I have on today. Before I introduce him, just wanted to talk a little bit about him, and then he'll do the rest, and we'll get it popping. So Richard D. Sutton is the owner of PDQ Management, LLC, and the founder of the Amari Academy, financial literacy coach and inspirational speaker. In addition, he is the creator of the 1,000 Black Men Movement. The 1,000 Black Men Movement, the 1,000 Black Men is a community outreach organization where men unite to make a positive impact on the youth. Richard's expertise and experience extends 10 years plus in the banking and finance industry. Sutton is also a dynamic speaker who has the ability to captivate his audience with his witty spirit, positive energy, and enthusiasm. Richard's work is founded on proven techniques and strategies for financial freedom and success. From the moment he takes the stage, Richard engages the audience. His passion for what he does is evident in his humor, paired with his fast-paced delivery style, help make the time fly while leaving a lasting impression. Richard's audience will learn the importance of credit, banking, and money management. His vision is to empower and to inspire children and adults through education. And his goal is to equip them with the tools necessary for financial freedom and success. But before I introduce Richard, I just wanted to give a little backdrop of how we met. So just recently, man, maybe not even about a week ago, we attended this event called the Motivating the Masses with Lisa Nichols. If all you secret fans know about Lisa, it was an amazing trip. I was in the beginning, I was a little reluctant to go in, because you know how most men are. Well, I won't say most men. I don't want to generalize, but myself, I went into this this event or conference, a 3-day conference, thinking I knew it all. And I ended up investing, some of the best time in my life. I made some amazing connections, including Richard. And this event happened to be, I would say 99% or 99.9% women. Shout out to all the women's groups and all the women's movement. And I mean, I saw Richard, I just saw him and we just gravitated to each other. We had amazing conversations and, here we are today. So, I just wanted to thank Richard for being here because he has an amazing story. You're going to love it. And, I'll let Richard do his thing. And, even though I gave you an introduction, but I know you could probably do it much better than I did. So welcome, Richard. How are you?
What's going on, bro? Listen, man, first off, I'm humbled that, you actually have me on your podcast. I'm all about energy and connection, bro. And from the moment we connected, it was like, yo, look, we stuck. I ride with this dude right here. So, that Philly, New York love all from the hip, you know what I mean? So I appreciate the opportunity to come on and, tell a little bit about my truth and who I am, what I do. And and engage in this conversation with you.
I really appreciate that, man. So, I want, again, like I said, we connected, we got connected at the hip, man. A brother from another mother and dad, man, but it was just an amazing experience that we had. We even upped the ante on the dress in the event, man. We had to make the men step up. So, we definitely our lights were definitely shining in that room, and
right. So
it was just an amazing time. But tell the listeners about your business and your movement.
So the business is, I'll be honest, PDQ Management started out as an opportunity to work with small business owners and help them with understanding the banking process because my background was in banking and showing them what the processes look like, what they should be looking for when they walk into a bank, what value they bring to a bank, what kind of questions they should be asking. And then it was just me being able to use my tenure in banking and my connections in banking to help. But it just got, rewired. Like God just took it a whole different way. And then I started working with the youth and I created my academy, the Amari Academy, teaching young boys, leadership, money mindset, self-respect, self-value. and how to treat, speak, and talk to a woman. So I started doing that, and that led from that, and then it was put on me to write this book, Fear of Becoming a Man. And so I really kind of like faded on the whole banking and been more focused on empowering the youth and, and other like-minded, men and women as a whole in my movement, and just trying to tell my story and make a difference. So, and even with that, I go by Mr. PDQ on all my social media. I do everything intentional. Nothing is haphazard. Mr. PDQ was my father's nickname. When my father passed away, so I took his name and made it my brand. So even for the company, People Demand Quality stuff. So that's why it's PDQ Management. It stands for People Demand Quality. And then for, social media, and when I speak, is Mr. PDQ. But a lot of times I still got to give the full government too. They're like, Mr. PDQ, what's that? Who's that? So I give both. But Mr. PDQ is, me just kind of taking my father's name and making it a brand, making it something that.
Well, I mean, I definitely appreciate the fact that you're keeping your dad's legacy on, man, because that's necessary, especially in our community. We tend to not pay homage to how we got here, and obviously I know your dad played a major role in that. So, what made you decide to create the PDQ management movement? I mean, I know you said about your dad, and what made you pursue this entrepreneurial venture full time?
They say a lot of times we ask God for things and then we don't pay attention to what God put in front of us. I think I was one of those people, and working in banking, they decided to let me go January 5th, 2015. And when they did that, a friend of mine was like, listen, you've been talking this PDQ thing forever. Why don't you just move on it? And I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to move on it. And I haven't looked back. It's just like I'm just trying to stay focused and do this entrepreneurial thing and be a difference maker. And I'm happy I did, because I wouldn't be able to meet people like yourself. I'd have been punching the clock. Wouldn't have been able to make it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm definitely enjoying the journey. Enjoying the journey.
Absolutely, and we have so much in common because we both come from the banking and finance forum, and I can say February 28, 2008 was the day when I received the pink slip, and I made the decision in 2008 not to come back. And, it was a rough ordeal for me financially. I, pretty much lost my place in the hierarchy in my family. And my wife was called to hold down the family financially while I stayed home, took care of the kids, and went through a little bit, a little bit of pain trying to find what I was called to do. I always knew what I was called to do, but I was trying to convince everybody to buy into what I did and what happened with me was when I decided not to seek validation and just, operated in my calling, the rest was history. So, we definitely have a lot in common from that perspective. So, what was the mindset that you had when you created PDQ Management? What was your mindset? What did it look like?
And then, like I said, it was really more of a focus on the whole. I'm gonna help small businesses. That like I wanted to help small business owners understand what value they bring when they come to sit down at a financial institution, because a lot of times they don't understand it. A lot of times they don't understand that banks go out every week looking to acquire new small business owners because they bring so much to the table. And it was just going to be my way of enlightening them, informing them, setting them up, but had people cater to them because of the people I knew, and bring the banker to them and them not to the banker. So it was more of like, all right, we're going to put you with, Wells Fargo. Well, I'm going to have a banker or the branch manager from Wells Fargo come to my office, and we're going to sit down, take them out of their environment and bring them to our environment. And I'm going to ask some questions that you might not think of because you're a small business owner. But, I'm saying, I'm going to put some questions in front of them to have them answer it to make you feel better about doing business with them. So that was my whole focus, but it never really panned out like I wanted it to. But I think it was all preparation to line up for everything else.
Absolutely, man, because I know when I was in the banking industry, it was really hard to get up to go to work. You had to deal with traffic. Back when I lived in New York, you had to deal with the train, and I would just sit on the train and I would look at individuals. It was just like I was looking at The Walking Dead, you know what I'm saying? And it was just zombies everywhere. And I realized that I was one of the Walking Dead. And, I always believed in having your own freedom and being able to get up and dictate how you wanted to live your life. So, I took similar steps, man. I, signed up for different business incubators, won business plan competitions, and it just felt right to be free as an entrepreneur. Even though I knew there were a lot of hurdles and obstacles I had to jump over, I would never change, the direction of my life. So, and I know you could attest to that. You know what I'm saying? So, so you was in banking. You was in the banking industry for about 10 plus years. So what was the defining moment that made you decide that you were going to pursue your purpose and passion and start the PDQ management movement?
When I got to work that morning, and my boss called me at 7:45 a.m. while I was parking my car and was like, "I'm gonna be to your office. We gotta talk." And in my gut, my spirit, I knew what it was. And I just was prepared for whatever it was. But then I really wasn't. When they let me go, I was kind of stuck. I felt like I was walking in a cloud, like, man, what I'm gonna do next, And then I had to wake up, like, no, you bigger than this, you greater than that. You know what I'm saying? Go do what you're supposed to do. And I had to move on it. And even a backtrack, what's funny is my father died 4 days after my 29th birthday. That following year, I bought my first house on my 30th birthday, Friday the 13th, July 13th. And it was my 30th birthday. And 2 weeks later, after having a house, I was watching CNBC, and I was watching this show called The Elevator Pitch. That's just the kind of geek stuff that I watch. Don't judge me. And so I was watching that, and his name just kept ringing at me hard, and it wouldn't stop. I had to literally get up, go up in my middle room on my whiteboard and write his name. And when I wrote his name on the board, it stopped. And then and it literally sat with me for another 2-3 years before using it, because I got married, was married for 3.5 years, divorced, came back to Philly. It was a whole evolution of what that was going to be, to where I'm at now. So, and I'm still in the grind. I'm still in the cuffs of the grunt. It's kind of like that. You ever see that symbolism with the iceberg? At the top is success, and under the water is the pain, the hurt, the struggle, the crying, the scars. Well, I'm still under the water with all that, but I'm good with it, though.
That's awesome, man. So you said your dad passed away on Friday the 13th.
No. I moved in my first house on Friday the 13th. My dad passed away 4 days after my 29th birthday.
Oh, okay.
My birthday is July 13th.
Yeah, man. Because it's crazy, because the reason why I asked that, because there's so many symbolic things that we kept finding out what our stories, talking and conversing with each other. Because my dad passed away when I was 15 on Friday the 13th.
Oh wow!
You know what I'm saying? So that day, that day is so surreal to me. But the bottom line is, we had to dig deep and really dig deep into our hearts on what we were called to do. You know what I'm saying? Because the bottom line is, when you work in corporate America for X amount of years, you become indoctrinated into what society dictates what your success is supposed to look like. Right. So it's very in the beginning, when you make that leap of faith to jump into entrepreneurship, it seems like you're on an island all by yourself, because there's nobody who could really, who you could really, converse with, and that's on the same level playing field as you are. Because when you jump into entrepreneurship, it looks like you're insane, you're unreasonable, it just, and then if you allow people's validation or their negative connotations on what entrepreneurship should look like for you, it can push you right back into a 9 to 5.
That's true.
Yeah,
the entrepreneurship isn't for the faint heart. You gotta be willing to grind out. And I ain't gonna lie, like I've buckled a couple times and actually tried to go back into corporate America. But once again, God does what he do, and he does what he do best. And even for me, I feel like I interview really well. And I had a couple interviews, phone interviews. It didn't go well. About 2 months ago, I went all the way down to Northern Virginia to interview for another bank position. And the interview went well, but it didn't come through. And I was like, you know what? All right, I'm listening. I'm paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
I got it.
And again, I mean, this is how I know, like when you meet people for a reason, man. And the reason we have so many stories that parallel each other, because I remember when I, got my pink slip, February 28, 2008. And I remember that I told myself I didn't want to go back. And I remember my wife saying, hey, listen, we had over $8,000 worth of monthly bills and expenses. So she's like, what do you mean you're not going back to work? And it was like, I'm not going back to work because I want to pursue my dreams. And she's looking at me like, dude, are you crazy?
Right.
I can actually recall applying for over 3,000. Now, mind you, 2008, I get laid off. I decide I'm not going back. In 2009, I get my executive MBA. So I always said, well, if I have my executive MBA, this would be something that I can fall back on. I can go get a nice six-figure job. Man, listen to me. I applied for 3,000 jobs. You know how many interviews I got over a span of, say, about 6-7 years? 3 interviews. And, I mean, they were really significant roles and jobs that I was willing to sacrifice my time for, because it was really on the magnitude of the level of people that I was going to help. It was worth it for me to do. And I, like you said, I interview very well, but for some reason, the Most High, the universe, that chapter of my life was closed. So I stopped fighting that because I didn't want to do that anyway. Now, I'm not telling everybody to do what we did, but, I had this burning desire in my heart that it was time to start transforming lives like I was already doing, but just doing it on a bigger scale.
It's funny. When I went on that interview, I came back home that night to my folks' house, and I couldn't sleep that night. I kept tossing and turning, and it was like, if you get this job, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? And I couldn't sleep. I was so uncomfortable. Like it was just like, I don't know if I want this. I don't even know if I want this life. It's not what I want.
Mm-hmm.
But but in the back of my mind was like, the interview went really well. You just may get a job offer. And nothing happened. But it was just like, man, like I've never done that before. I never went on an interview and then couldn't sleep that night because I was scared that I might get the job, because in my heart of hearts, I didn't want the job, and it was just like, it was a surreal situation for me.
Yeah. And again, I remember, applying for a director position to run an entrepreneurship center. And I mean, it fit like a glove. I mean, what they needed me to do, promote entrepreneurship. And I was very transparent that, I wanted to be the director. I gave them a clear plan of what we were going to do. It was a quick 6-month to a year program on how I wanted to turn the program around, because I had prior experiences in turning, business incubators around.
Right.
Sitting on board of directors of different organizations and knowing how, the money affects the bottom line. And I remember being very transparent to them and telling them that, I had a business on the side, but, I had a team of people. And, I mean, they were so gung-ho. And then when we get to the elevator, she's like, well, I have a problem with you being an entrepreneur. But that's not what she told me during the interview. So, again, I had to stop fighting the fact that what I was called to do now was totally different than going and getting a 9-to-5. And this is not taking a jab at anybody who has a 9-to-5, because
not at all.
But, when you're talking to people like myself and PDQ who are insane and unreasonable and really want to make a change in the world, these are some of the things that we had to go through. But, so let's talk about some of the roadblocks or circumstances that almost prevented you from starting your business. Can you share a little bit about that?
I think a lot of the roadblocks is always that self-doubt, that inferiority, because we're always taught to come out of school, get an education, and go work for somebody. Entrepreneurship is kind of like money management. It's not taught. You know what I'm saying? You think about it. Why do you think, as a country, we set in so much debt? Because from zero through college, unless you're a finance major, you're never taking a class to talk to you about money management, a money mindset, and how you should think. Nor are you ever taught to be an entrepreneur. So you go through those things, those self-doubts, those struggles, those what ifs. And if I fall on my face, then what? And, are you used to living a certain lifestyle? Listen, let me be 100% transparent. In the last year, I didn't have my car repo, right? I didn't have to move back home. I didn't been through so much in the last year that at times I felt like a failure. I felt like, I'm falling victim to what I was told that I was going to be, basically nothing. So, to get through those struggles and stand, even now, a friend of mine was just telling me last week, she said, I watch you. And she said, you don't take time to celebrate the small wins. You're so focused on the big wins that you're not taking time to celebrate the small wins. And as long as you don't celebrate the small wins, you always going to feel like you're struggling. And she was like, to everybody else on the outside, it looked like you're doing your thing. And you are doing your thing. But to you, you don't feel like it. And I'm like, you're right, because I'm not where I want to be at. But I know what that is, because I'm equating that to finance. I'm equating that to what my bank account looks like. I'm equating that to what I can and can't do financially. And that's not what success is. And so it's a learning process of understanding that success is about, being better and striving to become better than what you were a day ago, a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. And for me, I'm definitely a better man than I was a year ago. My mental, my conversation, my dialogue, how things impact me are totally different. For example, when I came to Atlanta, my cousin had made me a reservation for the hotel. And when I get there, I guess the young lady was new, or she just got her position as a boss, so she was feeling herself. And she was just like, yo, we can't honor this, that, and the other. So I called my cousin, like, listen, he works for the company. And she was like, she went in on him, like, did you read the small print on our last corporate email? And she was just being nasty. And I'm watching her, and I'm watching her body language. And I'm like, she's not hearing anything he's saying, so she doesn't even care. So I said, excuse me, man, can I have the phone back? I was like, listen, cuzzo, she not moving. So what's the game plan? He's like, listen, there's a hotel across the street. Let me see what I can do. Just give me a second. I said, all right. So I get my stuff. I go outside. I asked the dude, I'm like, where's the other hotel? It literally was across the street. So let me back up a second. The old me would have went ham in that hotel. The old me would have been like trying to destroy that chick, her feelings, who she was, her position. I would have tried to minimize her as much as possible because I felt like that's what she was trying to do. But then you see your growth. I was calm. I never got upset. I just stayed in motion. I walk across the street, and the young lady over there asked me, was I all right? And I was like, yeah, I'm trying to figure out something. So I told her what happened. She was like, don't even worry about it. Now, mind you, it's the same company that owns both hotels. She goes in, she makes me a reservation, but she does it under her employee joint, not my cousin's, but then still gives me the rate that my cousin had for me and give me the room. Just like that. And wow. I was like, you see what growth does for you? How patience, humbleness, right? And being obedient, just when God speaks, just be easy. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. I was just being easy that day. And it taught me a very valuable lesson and solidified the reason why I was down there, right? Because had I not come down there, I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have made some connections. So it solidified my progress. So, the hurdles are the hurdles that I've gone through with this whole process have actually not really been hurdles. They've been pots of growth. Mm-hmm. That's what I would call them, right? That I stepped in hurdles that became me being seated enough to grow from it and to be more of a distinguished gentleman in how I move. Oh, you like how I put that in there?
No doubt, man. And I really want the listeners to understand something that, we're all human, man. I can go into my story. I know what it is to get a car repoed. I know what it is to lose a home or lose homes. I know what it is to got to sit in court, just looking crazy, and I just want the listeners to understand that no matter how much money you have, no matter how successful you are, that you're always going to have roadblocks and you're going to have circumstances. And one of the reasons that I've created this Distinguished Gentleman movement, also stay tuned for my Mindset Revolution online membership, is I teach people how no matter what's going on in your life, that you're going to always have circumstances and you have to be bigger than them. And, PDQ just, said it, man, like you got to be calm. You got to be humble, and don't stop making yourself wrong. Stop making a situation wrong, because all of the things that we go through, is because it's building our character. It's building our mental endurance to endure bigger and better things. So stop beating yourself up if you're not where you want to be. Stop looking at other people and measuring yourself based on their success, because we all been called to do different things. So I just want you to understand that we all have roadblocks. Don't stop beating yourself up, man, because, if we could go through getting our cars repoed, having to move back home with our parents, losing homes, losing friends, even family, come on, man, let's get it together, man. So Rich, so tell me about, I want to know about the impact that, you becoming an entrepreneurial leader, an entrepreneurial authority in your world. How has it impacted your life and others?
I think the way it impacted my life is that you have to be mindful more of your movement, because you never know who's paying attention to you. Prime example of that was today. I got tagged on Facebook, and a gentleman said that I've been watching a few people, and these particular people I've been watching have been inspiring me, because how they move, the way they move is significant. And my name was one of those people. And anytime I see that kind of stuff, it humbles me on so many levels. And at the same time, it makes me realize that my movement has purpose, and everything that I'm doing is driven by a higher power. It has nothing to do with me. I give you another example. Somebody said to me, I said, it's funny, when I walk into a room, my presence is always felt. I also realized that I intimidate they dudes a lot. But then I realized there's a distinguished difference, that I can't intimidate another king. See, when I walk into a room, another king recognizes another king, i.e. me and you, right? It wasn't who this dude he is. It was, I like this boy. I like his energy. Matter of fact, that jacket he got on is crucial. You know what I mean? I like his flavor. You know what I mean? And so you learn that, who you are and what you represent is always on stage. So you never really get any days off. So you got to be mindful of your movement and your impact, because there's people watching. And so I try to be mindful of my movement, my words, what I say, how I do, how I move, who I interact with, because I never know who else is watching. Absolutely. And I always want to be an inspiration to people and not a distraction to people. So I'm at this point in my life where I want to cultivate relationships and not just have relationships. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so that's what means more to me, cultivating relationships with people. And no, I mean, I've known you for the last 20 years, but we can connect and feel like we've known each other for the last 20 years because we had so much in common. Our lives parallel each other, and this is what's bringing us together. And like you said earlier, to me, I believe nothing happens by chance or circumstance. Everything happens with purpose. Nothing just happens. I don't believe that at all. Mm-hmm. So this journey of mine has been a lesson on so many levels for myself, and watching people, how they respond to me, how I respond to them, being mindful of what I do, how I do, how I move, and but to ultimately in the end be an inspiration for somebody to feel like they can't. Even with the book, I'm hoping when people read the book that they put that book there and feel like, dude, this dude right here, yeah, I can do this. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely. And I mean, that segues into my next question real perfectly, fits like a glove. Let's talk about, what is your favorite book and what are you reading right now? And then we'll talk about what you got going on with your book. My favorite book of all time is The Alchemist. The Alchemist by Pablo Coelho is my number one, hands down, favorite book, must read by any and everybody. It's a dynamic book. it's one of those books that every time you pick it up, you're going to get a new jewel out of it. You can't get it all in the first read. Like anytime you pick it back up a year from now, 2 years from now, 6 months from now, you're going to be like, wow. Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Right? So that's one of my favorite books of all time. The book I'm reading right now is called Monday Morning Mentor. Is the book I'm reading right now. And it's a good book because it's about a young guy who his father's friend is the successful CEO, but he's an entrepreneur and he coaches other CEOs and stuff. And he tells the young guy back in high school that if he ever needs him, to reach out to him, no matter what, he don't care. And the young guy, he finishes college. He goes into corporate America. He's a manager, but he's at that crossroad of the struggle of trying to differentiate from being a leader and a manager, and how to be engaged in his team, but not be too involved in his team where it looked like they're friends. So he's struggling with that concept. I relate to that because as a manager in banking, I had to learn a lot of that the hard way. And so he reaches out to this guy, and every Monday morning he has to go meet with him, and he starts to help him get through this process. It's a really good book. If you ever get a chance to pick it up, grab it. Monday Morning Mentor is an awesome book.
Definitely. And I just wanted the listeners, all the listeners who would listen to the last episode where I had Ash Cash, shout out to Ash Cash. The Alchemist was a book that he read too. And if you talk to some of the most successful entrepreneurs, The Alchemist, we're giving them a shout out, by I think it's Paul Aiello. I'll definitely include that in the podcast notes where, you need to jump on that book, man. And, yes. But, we talking about books, let's talk about what you got brewing up with your book. Let's tell the listeners what's going on with that.
Oh, man, it's my truth. It's called Fear of Becoming a Man. It's really about my life and my journey and what it is to have to figure out what a man looks like, feels like, speaks like, act like, walk like, and having your father around but not present, having your uncles around but not present. So I got all these men around, but they're not teaching me how to be a man. And just my journey, just from a childhood through educational struggles, through heartbreak and romance, to the struggles with my son's mother, it's just my truth on raw and uncut. And even, somebody said to me, they said, well, how did you come up with the name? And I said, I woke up one morning and it was on my heart real heavy. God was like, name the book, Fear of Becoming a Man. And the guy, just like that, like all truth. And I'm like, whoa, you know what I mean? And so I went with that. And even down to the visual, what I wanted the cover to look like, everything came kind of with ease to me. And I never had no aspirations to set out to write a book. And so to write this book and for it to flow the way it flowed for me, and for the name, how the name came to me, for the cover to come to me, I feel like it's all purpose driven. I feel like this book is going to be life-changing for me on so many levels. And my goal is for it to become a New York Times #1 seller. That's my dream. That's my goal right there.
Now, that's awesome, man. So, again, I'm definitely going to include that in the podcast notes, because I'm definitely copping a copy because, I lost my dad when I was 15 years old, and I had to become a man overnight, wow. And I didn't have any. I had my brother. I had my cousins. They were a little bit older than me. It's about 6-7 years older than me. But they weren't around. So I had to, I didn't even realize I was living in a single family home. That's how connected I was with my family. But I had to become a man overnight. You talk about relationships. You just talk about your life. So I'm definitely going to have that in the podcast notes. And I encourage you listeners to pick up a copy. And then just segueing also into a book. All you listeners, you all have a story. You all have something that you can share. There's thousands of people who need to hear your story. They need to hear it from your lens. And I encourage you to write your book. Start operating in imperfection. Stop feeling like you can't, you got to do all of this crazy stuff. You can self-publish your book. There are no excuses anymore. get your book. And I will tell you this, just for a little bit of motivation, real talk. My book, and I'm going to include it in the show notes, I Am the Possibility, 10 Ways to Design the Life You Want to Live. I wrote that book in 2 days, okay?
Wow.
I had something on my mind, and I literally locked myself in my office, told my wife and the kids, you gotta give me this time because I need to get my story out into the world. And I wrote that book in 2 days.
Right.
Okay? So there is no excuse. You know, if anyone is interested in us doing a podcast about writing a book, we could do that too. But you have a story. People are starving. When you're not sharing your story with the people who are waiting for it, you're doing a disservice to the world. You have the ability to create breakthroughs for people and transformation. So I encourage you to write your book. I encourage you to pick up Fear of Becoming a Man by PDQ. Like I said, I'm going to include it in the notes, and we're going to rock out like that. You know what I'm saying? So I know we also talked about – yeah, I'm sorry.
I wanted to say something. You said there's no excuses, and I would have to disagree with you to a point. There is an excuse. The excuse is that you strive in mediocrity, and if you're comfortable to striving in mediocrity exudes excuses, and those who exude excuses thrive in mediocrity. So you have to ask yourself the question: is who are you? Do you thrive in mediocrity? Because excuses are futile, but they're easy. Everybody can make an excuse. I can make an excuse why I couldn't have made it to Atlanta. I could make an excuse why I'm sick as a dog right now. But I could have made an excuse why I couldn't be on this podcast with you, right? But the difference is the people like you and I are the people who want to move through the mud, the struggle, the storms, the rain, the sunshine, because we cool with getting dirty because we know what we want. And so you have a lot of people out here don't really know what they want. So they cool with striving in mediocrity. So those mediocrity exudes excuses.
Absolutely. And that was well said, man. And I mean,
go ahead.
And not to cut you off, I could say the same thing. I mean, you know, for a long time in my life, I lived in the world of excuse. I lived in the world of being mediocre, and it was a safe place for me at the time because it didn't require me to do work.
Right.
Okay. And kind of going back to being an employee, you know that you don't have to be the best you every day. You probably don't have to be the best you for the whole entire year because you know you're going to get paid on the 15th and the 30th. No matter what, all you got to do is show up.
That's it.
What we're embarking on as entrepreneurs is not only, you know, being entrepreneurs and being ambassador leaders in our communities as well as our national and international communities, but it requires you to be extraordinary. It's not, like you said earlier, it's not for the faint at heart, but I'm encouraging you. You have something that's great inside of you. And in my opinion, and being an employee, creates that barrier of excuse as to why you can't jump over that wall and live in your true calling. So, I mean, definitely thanks for, you know, bringing out that point. Now, I know earlier in the podcast you were talking about, you alluded to a good friend of yours saying that you don't celebrate the milestones, you know, the little small things. See, and that's what we need to do as men. We always looking at, well, I just bought this new whip and I got to go show my friends, and I got this new house with the swimming pool, and I got this new woman with the bad body and this and that. We always looking to show trophies, and we don't celebrate the little things that got us to that trophy or got us to that house. So I encourage you to celebrate the small things, because I'll never forget this. My football coach, you know, we had a lot of odds against us when we played football. We didn't have a lot of players, so a lot of us had to play, you know, offense and defense, special teams. We never left the field. And I remember my coach saying to us, he said, you know why we're not winning games? Because we're not doing the little things. And the little things matter. Even in relationships, you know, the little things matter. You could take out your woman to the Mr. Childs or wherever you want to go and spend $1 million, but she going to remember that card you wrote down for her when you first met her versus that meal that you spent $1,000 for. So, you know, I just wanted to, you know, allude back to that, you know, and being that your friend said that you weren't celebrating your milestones. What was one major milestone or accomplishment that you were able to create for yourself since creating the PDQ Management and the Fear of Becoming a Man book?
I think the book is my major milestone, bro.
Nice.
Because you talking to a dude who was put in special ed classes, who wasn't even supposed to finish high school, right? Who you know, I didn't feel like I was even intelligent enough to do certain things. You talking to the dude who, you know what I mean, just didn't always feel like I was as sharp as I should be or could be. You know, my dad, every people talk about my father, they say how smart he was. My dad was like a borderline genius. You know what I mean? He went to North Carolina A&T, was the law major, had a 4.0 GPA and then dropped out. Right? Before he passed away, he was just getting certificates and do stuff just to do it, just because he could do it. And I always used to feel like, why didn't I ever get his smarts, right? But my pop did something years ago that I think really saved my life. And you read about that in the book. I think had he not, I probably wouldn't have been able to write a book. I probably wouldn't have been able to meet somebody like yourself. You know, I feel like that was my major milestone. Like, I'm doing something that I wasn't supposed to do. Nobody would have ever told you. Told me 10 years ago that you going to write a book called Fear of Becoming a Man about your life. I'd have been like, man, get out of here, whatever. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's my milestones right there, man. And every time I look at it, I'm waiting. When I finish it, then going through the last edit, the upload is kind of like, dude, you can't ever say that you can't anymore. So even when I talk to the youth now, I tell them can't is a word that don't exist. It's not even a word that should be used or even should be described in Webster's dictionary. You know what I'm saying? It's, you know?
Absolutely. And, and that's one of the things that I talk about in my book in my first chapter, actually about the power of language, and one of my most best quotes that I like to make people think or create some type of thought-provoking activity in their brain is, your biography becomes your biology. I'll say it again. Your biography becomes your biology. So who you think you are and who you say you are is who you become. So if just because you may have been in special ed, you may not have been the most smartest person in the class, that doesn't give you the right to not pursue your dreams. And again, it goes back to society depicts on who on what place you should be in the world. See, as an entrepreneur, as a thought leader, as a transformational speaker, as a coach, whatever, it doesn't matter what, if you look at some of the most successful people, they dropped out of school. I'm not telling people to drop out. I still believe education is very important for our community. So, I went and got my executive MBA and I almost started to go get my PhD, but I'm like, I'm already a PhD. I don't need the paper certificate. You know what I mean? Right. And you remember back in the day, in order to become a PhD, you had to write a book. You don't even have to you don't even have to be a PhD. Well, you could become your self-published PhD by putting your own book out there. So, again, man, this podcast is for empowerment. It's for us to, like Lisa Nichols said at the event, for you to come on this podcast as a superhero. But this is a podcast where you come and you take off your cape and you become the regular, vulnerable man that you need to be in order to grow, to level up yourself. So that's one of the reasons why this movement has been started. So let me ask you this: what would you say are the three most important mindset hacks you think someone should know who's preparing to become a leader in the world?
One of those things is, I think, is always seek knowledge. Be one who seeks knowledge, and know that in seeking knowledge doesn't mean that you have to be the smartest one in the crowd. Seek knowledge and be amongst people who are smarter than you, so you can always feed on knowledge. That's definitely one of the things that I would say is critical. Two is be a reader. Readers enlighten, it uplifts, it opens your mind. It opens you up to a mindset that's different from the average. And if you look at, when you study most multimillionaires, they have an extensive library. Their library has some extensive stuff in there. Like one of my other favorite books is 16 Laws of Success by Napoleon Hill. It's a very powerful book. To me, it's the ultimate self-help book in the sense that it doesn't just give you tidbits. It tells you exactly some of the practices and processes that you need to have in place. The book is so powerful that you can't go into any bookstore and just get it. You actually have to go online and order the book. There's nowhere you can go to find this book that's in and you can grab it. You can't. You have to order the book. The third thing is be mindful of your circle. Your circle is your kryptonite, or it can be your strength. If you have the right circle around you, you can conquer so much more. We're not put here to do things solo. That's why you have marriages. That's why you build relationships. That's why you have friends. And know that you outgrow people too. Let me make sure I be clear on that. You outgrow people, and it doesn't mean that you're better than them. It just means you've outgrown them. Where they're going and where you're going is two different places, and I can't continue to go where you're going because it's not a part of my vision and where I'm going. It doesn't mean I think that you're less than me. It just means that my path is different from your path. Mm-hmm. And I'll see you in passing. Hey, what's going on? How you been? You good? Life treating you well? Love. But I'm still moving because I want to move with a wolf pack. Wolves move a certain way. I can't be a wolf and be rolling with a lamb. We can't rock together. Mm-hmm. It's not even in the cards. It doesn't work right that way. So those would be my three things right there that I think is definitely critical to leadership, entrepreneurship, and empowerment. Especially if you look to empower others off of what you've obtained over your time.
And I mean, I appreciate that because one of the things that I want the listeners to know is, you like PDQ said, you're going to outgrow people, and the bottom line, one of the best pieces of excuse, and I've said this in previous podcasts, is this: if you're in a situation where your light is shining really bright and you have to dim your light down to assimilate or be able to sit with someone, there's a problem. It's time for you to level up and keep that light on and let them keep their lights. I mean, but I feel that our responsibility as entrepreneurs and thought leaders is also to help people shine their light brighter as well. But, I've learned this, I've taken a stand for humanity, and I believe that everybody needs to transform. But what I noticed, what I've learned over time is, when you try to serve everybody, you serve nobody. So you definitely have to be very cognizant of who's dimming your light or who's attempting to dim your light. And you got to move on. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to necessarily cut them off, but you got to get around people whose lights are brighter than yours so you can figure out how to get your light bright like theirs. And then it's time to move on. And that's just the bottom line, man. So PDQ, tell the listeners where they can find you via social media.
Oh, man, on all social media, Facebook, Mr. PDQ or PDQ Sutton, Instagram, Mr. PDQ, and Twitter, Mr. PDQ. So try to stay distinguished with what it is that I brand. You know what I mean? How Jay-Z said, I'm a businessman.
I'm not a businessman. I'm a business man. Shout out to Jay.
Yes,
Brooklyn in the building.
Yes,
yeah, man. So
and visit the website www.fairbecomingtheman.com to purchase the book.
Yeah, I'll definitely encourage all the listeners, man, to pick up his book. And I definitely want to be a part of being a reason why you're a New York Times bestseller. So I encourage the listeners to pick up the book, man. We shared a lot of jewels, and the goal of this podcast is to be authentic, to be vulnerable, to take off our capes, to tell our stories, to let the other men know that being vulnerable is not a bad thing. Going through circumstances is not a bad thing, but rising is everything, So, I definitely would like to thank my guest, Rich Sutton, a.k.a. PDQ, for being on the Distinguished Gentleman podcast. And remember, the day before you quit, the day that you quit is the day before you succeed. So never give up. Thank you for tuning in. Peace.
Are you ready to take your brand to the next level? For more information, show notes, downloads, and free resources, head to www.damianandtimeesha.com, where you can find out more about this week's episode and the power couple behind it all.